Did you know that most people have never flown first class or business class? And it's not exactly hard to see why, seeing as the average first class ticket costs $1,300. But some first class airline attendants have revealed some things that no one really knows. And this includes even the passengers on first class flights. From how to get free first class tickets, secret perks and upgrades, and major scandals. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to look at first class airline attendants, answer questions you've always wanted to know. But before we pour out the champagne and take off, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too. Coming up first, we have free upgrade. So before we get into the secrets of first class, how do you actually get into first class? That is, without breaking your bank and spending $1,300. Well, according to the Daily Express, one travel author named Tilly Bagshaw has a trick. She says she uses 2 magic words to secure herself a flight upgrade. And those 2 magic words are revenue management. She says to book a flight with an economy ticket. She then calls up the reservation team and says, have revenue management released any first class seats? She also says to ask them how many seats are left. She then responds by saying, well then if the plane has that many seats unsold, why not release one for her? Apparently they often call her back the next day and guarantee her an upgrade to first or business class. She also says she sometimes brings gifts for flight attendants to increase her chances of getting a first class upgrade. The chance of an airline giving you a free upgrade for no reason is very slim. But as the saying goes, if you don't ask, you don't get. So it may be worth your time to book an economy and simply ask for an upgrade. Sometimes they'll ask for a tiny amount of money for that upgrade as you've already bought the economy ticket. And according to the travel author, sometimes bribing flight attendants really does work. So maybe pick up a couple of gifts in duty free. Next up we have coffee. Did you know that if you're not traveling in first class, you should not ever buy coffee or water? According to a flight attendant, you should never drink water on an airplane. And that goes for water-based drinks as well, like tea and coffee. That's because the water they give you mid-flight is very dirty. That's because while the water tanks on board are cleaned, they're not cleaned all that often. But if you're flying in first class, that is not the case. Almost all coffee in first class comes directly from the machine. Almost all coffee in first class comes directly from the machine. The water in this machine is replaced much more frequently, and it's usually very clean. And if you ask for water on board a first class flight, you'll usually get a bottle, which is fresh and of course clean. Next up is birthday cake. Are you traveling in first class for your birthday trip? Well, if that's the case, then you can actually request a cake to be brought on board at no additional cost. Most flyers don't realize this as it's not advertised anywhere. But if you phone up most airlines and say you're flying in first class and want a cake, they will oblige. Many people do this for a family member if it's their birthday when they're flying, but you don't actually need to be traveling on your birthday to do this. You can request a cake to be brought on board whether it's your birthday or not. So whether you're celebrating your birthday or you just want to eat a chocolate cake at 30,000 feet, then call up and get a free cake. Next up is Mile High Club. Are you familiar with the Mile High Club? If you're a member of the Mile High Club, it basically means you did it on board an airplane. But according to the Sun newspaper, one flight attendant said some of her colleagues were making some extra money on the side. As well as being a first-class flight attendant, she was also getting busy with some of the passengers. The flight attendant says she knew of 2 women doing this and one was fired. I don't imagine this is a common side hustle for flight attendants, but it's clear that some people really do this. Next up is passenger intel. When you get on an economy flight, the flight attendants are not gonna know your name. But if you're stepping onto first or business class, it's almost like the NSA has been spying on you. That's because the flight attendants have all of your information. But don't worry, they won't have this for malicious reasons. In fact, before the flight, they often have a briefing about the passengers. They learn their names and make sure they have all the information about them stored on tablets. On this, it will say the passengers' likes and dislikes if they've said them in advance. It will also have the purpose of their trip and any dietary requirements. And if they're flying for a corporation, it will have the name of that company. They do this to try and personalize the experience for you and make you feel like a real-life VIP. Next up is on camera. One reason people like first class is because they have some privacy. In economy class, you're squashed up next to loads of people you don't know. But in first class, you have your own personal area, which is a big appeal. But if you look at the back of the cabin, you may see a camera. This camera routes back to the flight deck and the flight attendant office. Now, they're probably not spying on you using this camera, but apparently they have it so they can monitor what's going on inside the airplane, and also see if anyone has some special requirements that they're calling out for. Next up is hair and makeup. Did you know that first class flight attendants have very strict guidelines when it comes to their appearance? Their nails can be unpainted, painted light pink, or have a French manicure. They also must wear red lipstick, and liquid eyeliner and eyeshadow is also recommended. There are also strict rules for their hair. They can have a French twist or a bun with a red scrunchie. They do this to keep a look of uniformity, and also to make sure they look as glamorous as their passengers may be. They are the ambassadors of the brand and airline, so it's imperative that they look immaculate. Next up is champagne. One of the perks of flying first class is the champagne. It's pretty much a first class staple to drink champagne up in the air. But if your plane is on the ground in the USA, don't drink champagne. When you're flying in the air, most airlines will serve Dom Perignon from 2005. But that's not the case if you're on the ground in the USA. If your plane's still on the ground in the US, they'll serve Moet instead of Dom Perignon. Dom Perignon is thought to be much nicer than Moet. But why do they serve worse champagne on the ground in the USA? Well, it's because airlines will have to pay tax on the alcohol served on the ground in the US. That's why they'll offer a cheaper, more limited selection of booze. So wait until you're in the air or in a different country before you pop the champagne cork. Next up is heels, please. As soon as the plane takes off, the first class attendants will all do one thing. That is, change their shoes to red flats. That's because it's a strict rule that they must wear heels in the airport and during the boarding process. Many of them don't like this, especially not on flights, as it's very difficult standing in heels for 16 hours. But in the airport and during the boarding process, they are brand ambassadors. But after takeoff, they switch to what they call service attire. This is where they sometimes remove their jacket and add a waistcoat instead. Did you know you can also spot the head flight attendant or purser by what they're wearing? The purser will usually wear the same clothing but in a different color to all of the other flight attendants. But you'll only see pursers on first class flights. And finally, we have bad passengers. On first class flights, you get all kinds of people, and traveling can make some people very irritated. Put those two factors together and chances are you may encounter some divas on a first class flight. Some flight attendants admit they actually don't like working with first class passengers. Because they're paying so much, they're usually much more demanding than economy passengers. It's also a lot more stressful as you have to do the research on all the passengers before you fly. Sometimes you're even nervous around certain flyers, as you may wonder, are they royalty or maybe a CEO? So while you may think that flight attendants would jump at the chance to work in first class, that is not always the case. But now it's time to make your voice heard. Vote in the poll in the top right corner. Have you ever flown first or business class? If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.